Hi everyone, I am Dr. Mansur Hasib and this is another episode of Conversations with Dr. Cybersecurity, where we talk to people from all over the world who have questions and we try to discuss issues that hopefully will be relevant to a lot of people. And tonight I have five amazing guests, starting with cyber rapper Tomiko Evans, and then I have Venkatesh from India, then Rhea Galsim, who is a blogger. I have Linda Nelson after that. She's an accent coach. And then I have Divine Ntang, who is a Master of Science in Cybersecurity Technology graduate. First, I would like to bring in cyber rapper Tomiko Evans. Please introduce yourself for 1 to 2 minutes, and then let's talk about your issues and questions.
Sure. My name is Tomiko Evans, and Dr. Hasib mentioned that I am a cyber rapper, and the reason I became or actually adopted that name was because I like to write poems, I like to rap, but I want it to be more of a talking about cybersecurity. So when I speak at conferences, I introduce my rap first to get the people going and everything, and then after that, then I'll start doing a presentation.
So what do you have in mind, Tomiko? I've known you for quite some time, and
Yes.
we kind of know each other, but hopefully you have some interesting questions that should help other people.
Yeah.
So
Actually, what drew me to you was creating a term, which is cybersecurity. So in your own words, exactly what is cybersecurity, and why do you feel that you had to recreate the whole definition? Because I was so fascinated by it. And by you answering this can help other people, to create their own definition, because, you're thinking outside the box. And I'm just saying,
So, so it's funny that you mentioned it, because in the last episode, KTA asked that same question, what is cybersecurity, as you know. She was trying to promote that, but you promoted the concept of cybersecurity in your rap much better. So for this session, I'm going to keep it very short, that cybersecurity is primarily people-powered perpetual innovation. Why did I feel the need to come up with that definition? Well, because first of all, people were approaching it just based on technology. They were forgetting all the other things. They were forgetting the policy. They were forgetting the people. And what was happening? The hackers weren't breaching technology. They were breaching your policy gaps and the people gaps. And since we had thought that technology is going to protect us, we left the people unprotected and unprepared and untrained. So as a matter of fact, we have treated them with such disdain, we don't even hire them. Many companies don't have chief information officers. Many companies don't have chief information security officers. So I felt like I have to define it. I also saw that the literature stopped literally at 2001. After 2001, the development in the cybersecurity models was non-existent, primarily because there weren't any doctoral programs in cybersecurity until 2010. So where is the literature going to come from? Where is the knowledge going to come from? See, just practitioner knowledge alone is not sufficient, because you cannot just teach people to drive a screw one way. That's the practitioner's approach. But you also have to say, what type of screwdriver am I going to use? What type of screw am I going to use? And what's going to work better? And then if I'm going to screw it on, say, wood, what kind of screw do I need? What kind of driver do I need? If I'm going to do it on metal, I'm going to need something else. So I felt like you really needed to teach people about the fact that cybersecurity first exists for a mission. So every company, depending on the mission, is going to have a different strategy. I was just explaining that to one of my students today. because it was not about learning a whole bunch of tools and figuring out how to hack and all that, because the hacking concept even would be different in different organizations. And the things that people would go after is going to be different. So that was the main reason. So I kind of provided a slightly different answer, because hopefully people will watch Katia's segment and get that answer, but I wanted to answer your question a little bit differently. Just saying.
So from the time that you created the definition up until now, do you believe that you reached quite a few people with that definition, where they're practicing and articulating it just like you, or similar to you?
I believe so, but what has also happened is that many people have embraced aspects of it, and then they are building their brand and their passion around that particular aspect. I mean, you are a good example, right? You took the definition, but then you created your own niche area in that. Katia has done that. So one of the reasons that I feel so blessed being in education is that in education, we get to teach people, and then they really become our disciples and followers, in the sense that, okay, if they believe in what we did, then they try to enhance and put their own brand and personality and passion around it, and then explain it to others in their own way. So for example, the people that follow you, Tomiko, well, they follow you because of you, but then because of you, they're learning cybersecurity the right way. Similarly, Katia Dean, she has her own influence. Everybody who comes to these sessions, Harminder at UMBC, all of those people. So literally by now, I would say at least 20,000 students have gone through my hands in variety of ways. And then on top of that, my book is globally embraced and used in many schools and colleges, as well as high schools. That's why I released the first chapter pretty much publicly on YouTube, so anybody can use it for free. So I do believe that it has become accepted. And as you noticed in Book Authority, how stunning is it that my book would actually still be in #3 of all time? I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Hey, that's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings me to my next question.
Okay.
Branding. Now, how would you, like, if a person is interested interested in having their own, defining their own self rather than having a company define them, how can you explain to a person that is interested in having their own brand, how can they get their brand, and what are some of the steps, if there is any, to go about doing it? I mean, because I know with me, I like, I have a, how can I put, not my personality, but my, the things that I like to do, my hobbies and things of that nature. That's how I pretty much got my, but
absolutely. So the hobby that you mentioned, that's like your passion, that's like your lane, that's your niche. So that is the first thing, is that what is your mission in life? So that is the first thing that has to be defined. What are you trying to do? And that mission may change from time to time. As your career progresses, your mission may change. But at any given time, you have to figure out, okay, what am I trying to do right now? Right now, for example, in your case, you were trying to evangelize drone cybersecurity and all that. You obtained your pilot's license for flying drones, and then you demonstrated how to hack drones. You wrote a rap around drones. Well, as you were doing that, what were you also doing? You were embracing some symbols. You had that logo for your company and all that, right? It may have been the drone, but at the same time, your personality wasn't about just that. You were also this rapper, had that side of you. So you embraced that, right? And you created a hashtag out of it, the cyber rapper, all right? So when people look for a hashtag cyber rapper, most of your posts should be there. And so that's what branding is. That first of all, what do you stand for? And then what your name, how your name is displayed. It is very important that your name becomes your brand. So Tomiko Evans, why is it important that that name be displayed exactly like that, pronounced like that at all times? It cannot be just Tomiko. It cannot be Miss Evans. It cannot be anything else. You have to insist that no matter where your name is displayed, it must be displayed in that same way, because that name is your brand. And then what happens is that the causes you support, the actions, words, deeds, all of this kind of surround that brand and mission. And guess what? People start to follow that. And then you have to stay in your lane. It's very important that when you have established a brand, that you don't start straying into things that you're not qualified to talk about. Give you a good example. There are many movie actors and actresses that get too much into politics. I'm not a big fan of that. Why? Because the moment they get into politics, they're going to divide their audience. Now, for an actor or actress, do you really want to divide your audience? I am a cybersecurity educator. I'm a professor. Do I really want to divide my audience? Absolutely not. I could care less what somebody's political affiliation is or what their religion is. I want everybody to embrace the knowledge and the things that I'm trying to teach so that my own mission is never deviated from. Do I have opinions? Do I have preferences? Of course, but I have to keep that private. That can never be part of my brand, you see? And I should never allow my brand to sell anything or promote anything. So if you'll notice, in the public space, I never talk about supporting a particular political candidate or anything like that. Am I connected to some? Yeah, I'm connected to some, but I don't go out there and say, hey, vote for such and such, etc., etc. It's not right, because that's not what I'm all about. But I would encourage people to vote, because that is important, but not necessarily for a particular person. You see what how that means? Staying in that lane. And so in your case, for example, if you want to be passionate about that, drones and rapping and all of that, then you got to stay in that lane. Your brand will become important enough so that various product makers will say, hey, Tomiko, will you support my product and all that? Well, that's when you have to think, do I affiliate my brand with this? You see? Because people are going to come after you because your brand is often so strong that it will try to sell things. And I'm not a big fan of that. I'm very careful about what things I promote and I really don't like to advertise for people, but I say that, hey, if you want to sponsor one of my talks, you will be acknowledged, but I'm not going to promote your product.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's a very different, subtle thing.
That's kind of ironic, because somebody just came to me and asked me to promote them and with a GoFundMe. And I'm like,
Oh, right. You see, so you're getting that whole thing about staying in your lane, protecting your brand, because as your brand value grows, guess what? Anything that is affiliated with you, their value will grow automatically. So any organization that I'm affiliated with, they will automatically benefit from the power of the brand and the value of the brand. So that is the biggest reason. Because as you develop your brand, your value goes up. You can command a higher salary. These are the most amazing things about personal branding. And today, because corporate brands are on a decline because of the way corporations have been treating people, so personal brand is far more powerful today than corporate brands.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
I didn't know that. I did realize that when I ran for the first time for a voting contest. If you remember, what was it, 2017, when I won my first voting contest? Because I was going against some pretty well-known companies with big marketing departments and multi-billion-dollar revenue. And I'm thinking, I'm an individual. How could I ever win against these people? But then I realized that my personal brand power and the associations of the people that I touched were far more powerful, because it is passion that drives, not the numbers. So a company might have 1 million subscribers, but are they really passionate about that company? I, on the other hand, might have 2,000, 10,000 followers, but they may be very passionate. So when I'm running against that company, my people are voting, their people are not. That is the difference.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. It's good to know. All right. So my next question is, when hiring someone, which would be better as long-term investment? Training someone that's already at the company, bringing in a more experienced worker for the company, or hire an entry-level individual and train them to grow in the company? Which one would you, or depend?
Yeah, this depends. Definitely so one of the things that a internal person already typically has, you probably have read that chapter on teamwork in my book, where I talk about teamwork. Teamwork has to be built. So the people that are already within the company, they already have an established teamwork relationship already built. So if an internal person could do the job with some training, that might be preferable, because teamwork is hard, very hard. Now, let us say I bring in, whether it's a brand new graduate or somebody from the outside, I would still have to integrate that person into the team, and the entire team will have to have an adjustment process. That whole 4 stages of teamwork. The first part is the forming, the honeymoon phase. Then you have the storming phase, where all the various personalities come out, preferences come out, and you might have arguments during that phase. And then you come with the norming phase after that, where you start to adjust to each other's personalities, roles, responsibilities, until you get to the performing phase. So whether you bring in a brand new person who is experienced, or a brand new person with a master's degree, or a fresh graduate or bachelor's degree, you will still have to do the teamwork part. Now the question is, who would be better for the company depending on the job? Typically, if I know how to do the job, if I know what that job entails, and I have the expertise to groom somebody, I would much rather get the fresh graduate. Here's why. Because the fresh graduate has nothing to unlearn. And unlearning is one of the hardest things when I bring in somebody to integrate with the team, because they often will have maybe an ego of their own. Maybe they were 10, 15 years in the industry, and they already have been doing something, and maybe it was wrong and they never realized it. They come here, they have a very hard time adapting to the culture.
Yeah, I mean, because what's going on right now in cybersecurity, they're just hiring a bunch of experienced people. So I'm guessing from what you're talking about, if you knew the position, knew the job, you can train the entry level. So majority of people right now that's bringing in the experienced people, I guess they don't know the job. You know.
Yes, you hit it on the head. Exactly. Some of the hiring people don't know the job, and so therefore they're struggling, and they are bringing in people hoping that that experienced person is going to do the job, and they are not capable often of assessing fresh graduates' credentials or qualifications, because they don't know what questions to ask. So this is one of the biggest problems you've hit upon. So yes, Tamiko, this is absolutely wonderful. We have finished our time, and I really enjoyed your questions and your personality. So I would now like to bring in Venkatesh from India.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Venkatesh here from India. Yeah, and very good morning, because it's early morning now.
Yes,
it's 4:30 in the morning. So, and I'm all excited to be on the Cybersecurity show. So how are you doing, Doctor?
Wonderful, wonderful. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your passion? What is your job? What do you do?
Yeah, sure. I come from the cybersecurity background. So prior to that, I would also like to tell you that, I usually started my career as in the HR department as a human resource person.
Human resource.
So I worked out. Yeah, so I worked there for almost 4 years before making my shift into the all the happening domain, which is the cyber industry.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's a brief background. So in my current profile, so I'm just working on the governance area, like say policy management and access management, and also another challenging field, what I would call now is the awareness.
Very good. Okay. Wonderful. 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 So that's good to know. You came from the HR area and now you're doing awareness training and all that and policy and governance. That is absolutely wonderful. I've always said cybersecurity is for everyone. So that is very amazing that in India, they are embracing governance and policy. So are you aware of the model that we have, that we were sharing, the model that Tomiko talked about? Have you read any of that?
Not yet. So I've just decided, I think post this session, that's the first thing which I'll be doing.
Okay, great. So do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, so first of all, I would like to thank you, Mansur, for giving me an opportunity. And I'm glad that you came into the education domain after, having ample of experience. Mm-hmm. So I think it's time that, you start nurturing the next generation leaders, like every one of us.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
And I'm sure, viewers all across the globe would also agree with me. So my first question is, I'll just since I've started following many of your posts on the LinkedIn also. Mm-hmm. So I would like to specifically ask about the leadership aspects, right? So is the current industry, right, ready for the young generation leaders?
Yes, leadership is very, very important because leadership is essentially looking at, somebody actually on LinkedIn posted this concept of knowing that there are problems that are sort of in a very well-known domain, and then there are problems that are in an unknown domain. What is a well-known domain? Mathematics. 2 + 2 we know equals 4. And so in firewalls, if you open up this port, you know that you're bringing in this kind of traffic, etc. But when a breach happens or a crime happens, how you solve any of that is not necessarily a very, very well-defined problem. This is where leadership, problem solving, out-of-the-box thinking, and all of those other skills that are very, very highly required comes in. That is not a technical issue. Crime solving is not a technical issue. Of course, you bring in technology, you use technology, but there are methodologies, there is a governance aspect, there are rules, there are policies. You have to be able to make sure that your evidence stands up in court and all of those things, protection, making sure that the evidence is not tampered with. So you got all these things and they're all aspects of cybersecurity, and yet none of them may be technical. So that is why leadership has become the single most important thing and became my passion, because that was the thing that I saw wasn't being done anywhere. It was being taught. Cybersecurity was being taught most of the time from computer science departments or schools of engineering. And so guess what? They were teaching people all this encryption and all that, but they were never teaching them when would you use what encryption and why. And by the way, do you have to really encrypt everything, or do you encrypt some things versus other things? I mean, so that decision-making, that risk-taking, risk management was never being taught. Leadership was never being taught. And so therefore I figured that's what needs to be done. And so I made that my passion. So one of the things that in Tomiko's question that I didn't address is that you also have to figure out what is it that I can be the best in the world in, and make that your mission and brand. So I figured, okay, if nobody's doing cybersecurity leadership, it will be very quick and very easy for me to become the best in the world in that particular field. As a matter of fact, I literally got to define the field before it existed. And there are plenty of fields within the space of cybersecurity that exists today that has no definition, that has no like symbol, so anybody can embrace it. And I told that to Tomiko also when she was trying to build her brand. I said, if you pursue drones, you could probably be world famous within a couple of years. And it has happened, because last year she won 2 awards. They were both global awards. How did she win? Because she had carved that niche, found that hole, and hit the goal. And that's what it's all about. You need to find out things that is not being done, address, become a leader in that, and become the best in the world, share your knowledge. And that's all leadership is all about: sharing knowledge, showing people how to solve problems, and helping to solve the problems that are undefined.
Yeah, so with that, like, I'd like to ask another question. So why isn't like the present generation leaders, right? Why aren't they influencing the younger generation leaders? Why don't they give like more opportunities? Like, until unless, like, I remember you speaking in one of the previous posts. So for example, if you are going to give a webinar, so why don't you take your colleagues or like your junior resources also? So that, like, they would also like to understand, like, what happens in the background, and how do they, like, how do the leader, convey the message, something like that.
So are you talking about why don't I mentor other leaders, or are you talking about other leaders not necessarily mentoring?
I'm sure, like, you're already doing it in your current role. So I'm just talking about the other industry leaders as well.
Why are they not doing that? Is that what you're asking? Well, see, remember that there's a lot of, that's a very complicated issue, because first of all, sometimes people think of their knowledge as positions of power. They feel like if they hoard the knowledge and they don't share it with anybody, that their power will somehow be retained. But actually the opposite happens. People who know a lot will typically be very generous in sharing. People who don't know enough are often scared to share, because when they share, it is likely to be challenged. Every knowledge, once it is shared, will be challenged. You can bet on that, right? My knowledge that is already out there, it's open for criticism. That's what peer review comes from. So sometimes people are afraid of that maybe they don't really know enough. They may be in positions of power and authority, and somehow they got there, but that doesn't mean position does not determine knowledge. So just because somebody is titled CIO or Chief Information Security Officer doesn't mean they necessarily know their job. For example, a chief financial officer and then a chief information officer. If the chief information officer is reporting to the chief financial officer, even though the title is chief information officer, that person is not a chief information officer. Because the real chief is the chief financial officer. In another department or organization, if the chief information officer is reporting to the CEO, chief executive officer, and has equal power as the CEO, and the CEO is not allowed to overrule the CIO on a digital strategy, technology strategy, cybersecurity strategy decision, then that is a true chief information officer. Anytime another so-called chief officer is allowed to overrule you on what is your domain, that means you're not really a chief. So there's a lot of times you have that situation that there are people in titles, but they're not necessarily qualified for those titles. And that is why I've often said to my graduates who are often afraid to go out and challenge the status quo, I'm like, you go out there and be proud of the fact that you have the right knowledge. I can assure you I have sincerely given you the right knowledge. And that right knowledge is far better than the wrong experience.
Yeah, totally agree.
And never challenge your authority. That's what I've told everybody. If your supervisor doesn't happen to know enough, no problem, you can teach. And as long as they're embracing of you and welcoming of you, not a problem. Teaching is not a problem because they have something to learn also. Maybe they can learn about the company culture, how to succeed in that company. That's what that person could teach. My graduates could be teaching them how to run it properly. As a matter of fact, I was talking to somebody today and I was saying that even though this person doesn't have experience in the cybersecurity field, she has so much experience in many other fields that she's already a leader. She already has a solid background in the GRC area that you were talking about, the policy area that you're talking about. I said, my God, a CIO type or a CISO type would absolutely love to have you like a chief of staff person. That person is not an entry-level person. Her brain is pretty mature. She has leadership skills. She has tremendous communication skills. So a lot depends on who is embracing. If the right leadership is out there, they will embrace people. I was always that kind of a leader. I ran many organizations where, for example, I'll give you a great example. I'm not a programmer. I would never even dream of building something, but I know what the final product would like to look like. So what did I do? I hired some of the best programmers, gave them the vision, and made sure that they were working as a team so that the final product would be great. And did I share my weakness of not knowing programming? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I was telling them, this is why I'm hiring you.
Yeah, I think ultimately, we just have to see, what we have to achieve and then, try to get it done.
Yes, exactly. What does the company need? Doesn't matter whether I know it or not. If I don't know it, if the company needs something, I better be willing to bring in the right people to get that thing done. And sometimes it is somebody grooming from within. I've done that. Somebody fresh from outside. I've done that. I've also hired some experienced people from the outside, but I can tell you from experience, people coming in with a lot of experience from the outside are harder to assimilate.
Yes, I agree.
They still can, but they are harder to assimilate.
Yeah.
Because I was big about teamwork.
Yes. Yeah, I think teamwork, I think, the main objective is first what's the objective of the company, and then comes the self-individual.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah, most of the time it happens that with experience they tend to somehow confuse each other's objectives. Yeah.
Correct. You don't want two different team members to be fighting with each other because that could be really destructive for the company.
And that's a bigger risk also.
Correct. So we probably have time for one more question from you, Venkatesh. So please go ahead.
So another question is, Dr. So with a lot of new technologies, right, with the artificial intelligence, blockchain, machine learning. So what's the scope for what's the cybersecurity? How would you see cybersecurity in this, multiple technologies, even including IoT also?
So I don't like to predict things, but I think that all of those things are very interesting and important. I do recommend that there are some excellent books on blockchain technology. Blockchain is one of the most revolutionary technologies that is out there. because it could literally redo the whole world. It could change the way we bank today. It could change the way we do healthcare today. It could change a whole bunch of things. Is it going to be effective and all that? I don't know, because there are too many positions of power already who are benefiting from the status quo. For example, the current banks are going to very much prevent a blockchain-based banking system from ever happening, because that kind of a banking system would drive up all the big banks that are literally making money from other people's money right now. So that technology, then there are companies that are creating blockchain by default is open source, right? But there are people creating proprietary blockchain islands. And that is completely anti-blockchain concept.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that. Who knows what's going to happen? I don't know that, but it is certainly something that could take almost 10 years to come. But I do see many places where promising things are being done, because this whole nonsense of having big repositories of private information in the hands of other people who are not really doing well with that information is not good. My information should be with me, within my control. I should be able to figure out who it goes to, not somebody else who is making money off of that. And if my information is going to be monetized, I should be the one monetizing it, not somebody else. So that was a great question. So thank you very much, Venkatesh. And I am now going to bring in Rhea.
Hi, everyone, again, and hello to everyone who's live streaming. So my name is Rhea. I'm actually a native New Yorker, and I actually have a very interesting background. So my background is primarily in marketing, project management, and cybersecurity. And I had worked in financial services for about 5+ years until I made the full transition into cybersecurity. So for me, I would say my experience is really working across stakeholders. So I'm very familiar with working across technology teams, compliance and legal, product management, and the whole 9 yards of different types of organizations, if you imagine working in a banking or a financial company. And so I actually got into cybersecurity because of an email campaign. And it was actually an incident with one of my campaigns where we had targeted the wrong segment of users.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I mentioned this to everyone because it's just a great segue into how someone with a non-tech background per se can get themselves into cybersecurity or can be interested in cybersecurity. And so with that campaign, honestly, it was about like 30 or 40 people that were wrongly targeted. And just like any company, there were processes behind it that misfired. And so, I mean, everyone knows this after a while, like something went wrong, it was a human error. And so I actually got into reading about data privacy. And then that was the whole Cambridge Analytica Facebook scandal all happened around the same time. And so I just got so hooked on, reading about different types of how data can be misused and whatnot. And then I quit my job and I went to Chicago to take a program at a cybersecurity boot camp. And that boot camp was also a penetration testing services firm. So really it's pretty intensive. It's a 17-week program and you're exposed to all of the cybersecurity applications and you learn about the NIST frameworks and different types of cloud security concepts. And so you're doing that in addition to working with a nonprofit client. So very hands-on, very busy. And in general now, yeah, so I mentioned that just because, again, like everyone is always curious as to how you get into cybersecurity or what sparked it. And for me, I've always been someone who's technical. Like I enjoy working with my developers when I was on the opposite side. And now I'm actually sitting at their table per se because I have to like understand code a lot more, even though I wouldn't say I'm a natural programmer.
Right. But you understand the mission, you understand the business, so you are a leader in this space. So that is one of the key things that we find, that people are coming from all walks of life and then finding their passion because it makes sense. Because at the end of the day, you are trying to make an organization successful or your client successful, because everything else doesn't really matter, right?
Right.
So that's wonderful. Thank you for that introduction.
Yeah.
So what did you want to talk about today?
Yeah, so definitely. So I have a couple of questions. And so for me, one of my questions is, someone with myself who's a career changer. I really do identify myself as someone who has a business background. I always try to be objective as much as possible. And just like you said right now, you know, at the end of the day, it's getting the results done is what really matters. And at the same time, like, I've identified my interest in cybersecurity because, again, like, cybersecurity is so broad. And so the area that I actually really want to get into a lot further is cyber risk and vulnerability management, which can be like opposite sides per se. But at the same time, the reason why I like that area in particular is because you get to look at the threat landscape and you get to work with business leaders. And so my question is, you know, what would be your advice as to someone like myself who's trying to get into that specific field and at the same time leverage, you know, my past experiences already working with different stakeholders and, again, having a business background?
This is an excellent question and actually allows me to mention something that may be helpful in your branding and also the way you talk about yourself. You're actually not a career changer. Cybersecurity is all about business. Cybersecurity is all about the modern organization. So this is why my book is titled Cybersecurity Leadership, Powering the Modern Organization. See, part of the reason that I had to do all this is because the business schools aren't teaching you what they're really supposed to be teaching you. They should have had cybersecurity leadership as a key component of the, whether it's a bachelor's program or a master's program, it doesn't matter. They should have already had that, because the modern executive can never be successful without that. So what you are doing is filling in that hole in your business training or education, whatever you did, however way you arrived at it, you are essentially doing the exact right thing in updating your skills. And I believe every business executive should be doing what you're doing. So you are actually becoming a business leader of the modern organization. So my hat's off to you, kudos to you. I believe that you should continue doing exactly what you're doing, continue to share your story, but also not mention that you're a career transitioner into cybersecurity, because you're not. You have essentially adapted the principles of cybersecurity, the principles of information, data risk, into the financial risk realm that you already had, the business risk realm that you already had. So that's what you're doing. So what has happened? Your entire business risk now is financial risks, information risks, reputation risk, all of those combined. And when you're talking about the risk, you should never talk about high, medium, low, or in cryptic numbers. It should all be financial. Things that CEOs and CFOs and business leaders would understand, and you yourself would understand. Same thing with mitigation. For example, when you identify a risk, which might be a negative risk, you would never mitigate it by spending more money than the risk itself, right? If the risk, let's say, is $1 million, you wouldn't spend $2 million to mitigate that risk. It simply wouldn't be done. That is not business. That would not make business sense, right? And then you would document that and go on with it, because you realize that the mitigation is more than the risk itself. Similarly, you often have situations where you have a positive risk. If you do this, you're going to make $40 million. Well, then you can sometimes take a risk of that. That, okay, I'm going to take this $1 million risk and spend this $1 million, but I can get $40 million back in return. So as a business professional, hopefully that's the way you also analyze your cybersecurity risks, because they're just a continuum of the business risk. They're not separate. And that is why I have always said that you should never have a separate risk officer. Get your risk officer trained and educated to understand the entire business risk, not just a small slice of it.
Right.
So my hat's off to you, Rhea. You're doing great. You're not a career changer. Would you embrace that as your personal branding now?
Yes. I mean, it's interesting because I would hear career changer and then I wouldn't hear it. So then I get confused, like, what am I really doing? But yeah, I mean, it's a great transition, I'd say, like moving from a purely marketing background where we are using different applications and different tools, but then now it's like I'm actually on the other side where I look at it from a more cybersecurity control perspective instead of just, here's just a business goal, this is the time frame, and this is how much it will cost. So it's great. Another thing that actually recently just happened to me, which is a great segue into my questions, is sometimes when I go for interviews, and actually a couple of weeks ago I went for another interview, and the person actually told me, and I didn't say that I was a career changer during that interview, he actually told me that my background is actually too broad. So
okay.
I know, and for me, I've gotten to a point where these things don't really hurt my feelings anymore.
That is wonderful.
I disagree. Like deep down, I was like, oh, here we go. Another person who thinks I'm too broad or I'm too much of a generalist, right? And so it made me kind of think that, and again, this is not the first person I've heard who has said something similar, where it makes me feel like cybersecurity without the human element seems very siloed. It seems like everyone wants a security engineer or someone who comes from a software development background.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've heard this before, but that's not the case with cybersecurity. And so I'm just wondering, how could I next time around convince these individuals who say that my experience is too broad and I'm too much of a generalist? So how can I, convince them that, I actually do bring additional value because I actually have a lot of experience and also people experience, which is really.
Yeah, so we may have to talk later also, and I would like to examine your background a little bit more. But what I am sensing right now, just from what you are talking about, and especially the way you describe your background in such lucid and business terms, you may be applying for jobs that are too low for you. You may need to look higher, because you should be thinking of becoming a chief information security officer somewhere or a chief information officer somewhere where you can understand the mission of the organization and drive the entire strategy in that broad way, because you already have that brain and that mentality and that grasp, because you came from that business background. You already know this. And then you've also now added that cybersecurity element to it. You are probably a good representative of what a future CEO should be capable of doing. So you're already in that space. So you can ask Tomiko, you can ask every one of my graduate students. I have always said that they will be better CEOs than many of the CEOs today, because it is all about digital strategy. It is not about finance and all that. I can get an accountant and I can have that accountant do the finance and accounting. I do not need a accountant to be running my company today.
Right. Yeah.
So
I mean,
we
honestly,
should have that conversation with you perhaps later, and examine a little bit more about your background and the types of jobs that you may be applying for. But it sounds like you need to elevate the positions you're looking for. You may be another great person who would be a great chief of staff for a CIO or a CISO. If you don't feel like you're ready to be there, you could be a great deputy CISO or a CIO or something like that. Though you could even be a great chief of staff for a CEO. Do you know how many CEOs would embrace a person like you with that knowledge that can actually oversee the cybersecurity realm, but also translate it to business risk and make your CEO understand whether this makes sense or not?
Right. Yeah, I think what's hard is that sometimes it's hard to craft that, unique background in a way where, and that's kind of like a goal for me in the long run, is how to create my own position using my unique background when there's no job application for that online. It's kind of through networking, it's through individual groups, it's going on these calls like we are on right now. And so I think that's also like another great question is, how do you craft your own potential career if you have a unique background and the job isn't necessarily there yet?
Yes. So this is, again, as I mentioned, I would love to have a follow-up conversation with you on that, because there is a definite plan. But right now we're running out of time because I want to bring in the next person, Linda Nelson. And Linda Nelson, you're an accent coach. Why don't you introduce yourself for a couple of minutes and let's get into what you want to discuss.
Great. Thank you for having me. I came here in a little bit of a roundabout way. I met Dr. Mansur Hasib through Tomiko Evans.
Oh,
yeah. So Tomiko and I had a consultation one time. I am a speech therapist, certified speech therapist, and I work mostly with accent reduction and also corporate speech and giving people some confidence. Tomiko and I had this great conversation. We had a serious connection right away. I think she would agree. She is a drone pilot. I actually am a private pilot. I have
wow.
Yeah, and I got that in, won't give away my age completely, but I got that in my mid-50s. I became a private pilot. And so Tomiko and I just like really hit it off. And she kept talking about her mentor, So I started following Dr. Hasib. I have no knowledge of cybersecurity. I really am here for Dr. Hasib's personality, for his branding, for his messaging. And I've been following him, again, not knowing anything that most of you folks know as far as IT and cybersecurity, but I really wanted to talk to him, and I'm glad I'm here because I just want to talk to him about how he's done just such a marvelous job with his branding. And I am a startup in ways. I've been a speech therapist for 30 years, but I've only been working in accent reduction. I founded my own business about 3 years ago, and I work with mostly non-native English speaking folks that are really advanced English speakers, but they just want to get a little bit more fluent, a little bit more natural sounding, so that the name of my company is Be Understood. And that's really what I'm aiming at, is for people to be understood, not for people to be perfect little clone American English speakers. But when they're trying to get their message out, I want them to feel comfortable, not be frustrated. And so Dr. Hasib which was fun for me, as I started watching some YouTube videos and listening to him speak. And one of the things, and I did ask his permission to ask this question, but since English is not your first language, right, Dr. Hasib, I just wanted to know what kind of tips he could share with me that led him to speak as fluently and naturally as he does. He's just a wonderful speaker, and I want to share some maybe things that were successful for him with some of my clients. Like that would be really huge if that would be my question.
That's an excellent question, and actually gives me the opportunity to share something that I have shared with Tomiko. Anybody that I coach in public speaking, I have shared this, because even if your first language isn't English, it doesn't matter. Everybody could use better diction, better pronunciation, and less of an accent, regardless of what that is. Because as you said, Linda, our primary goal of communication is to be understood. And if our audience doesn't understand us, then our communication is completely useless, even though our English may be perfect. So I'll tell you a story. When I was a teenager, one of my friends got me a job at the Bangladesh radio station to be a disc jockey for English music, so world music. There was a channel called World Music, and so I was a disc jockey there. And there people saw that, hey, this guy's voice is pretty good for the radio, but his accent seems to be pretty bad. But we want him to audition for reading the English news. Would he succeed in getting rid of this mishmash of an accent? Because I had the mishmash of an accent, some of Bangladeshi accent, some of American accent, some of English accent, from the various teachers in the schools and things like that, because I was growing up in a different culture. And so I was very excited. I had to try to perfect the British accent. So then I started looking around, and one of the things that I found, it was a book where they were talking about how you can, how the biggest reason why we have accent problems is because our tongue and our lips are used to saying certain sounds in our original language, whatever language that may be, and those organs are simply not used to sounding and speaking English the way it's supposed to be done. That's number one. Number two is our ears think that that is normal. So even though we may be sounding terrible to the other person who cannot understand us, to us, that's normal, because that's what we know. That's how our voice and accent sounds. So the trick is to retrain your lips and your tongue. And the way I learned it is this: you clench your teeth like that. And then you read aloud for 5 minutes every day like this. Build value for your work. Pronouncing and enunciating every word and every sound properly, straining the lips and straining the tongue to force it to work harder. This has to be done for 5 minutes every day. Why is it 5 minutes? Because if you do more than that, just like any other body muscle, it might develop cramps and become overtired. So it's good to do 5 minutes over a period of a month than to do, say, 5 hours at a time. You don't want to do that. And so I have taught this, I've done this myself. That gives us better control over our lips and our tongue. And that improves the diction, gets rid of the accent. But because we are reading it loud and we are being forced to read it correctly, so my recommendation is, if you're trying to learn the British accent, listen to somebody who has the British accent, whether you BBC or whatever, and then try to mimic that in this way, forcing your tongue and lips to work harder. And then you will be able to master it. I have done this with my Japanese students, Chinese students. That was one of the ways that I came to America. I coached foreign speakers to learn English and prepared them within 3 to 5 months to read in the appropriate language, because they were coming from countries like China, Thailand, various countries, and they couldn't speak English or write English at the level that they're supposed to. They're supposed to read in the 7th grade, but their English and their speech and everything is in the 3rd grade or 2nd grade. I had to bring them up to the right grade. And so these are things that I used to do that, and I used it myself. I did, and I still did it after I came to America, and I was trying to master the American accent. I don't know to what extent I've mastered it, but it's certainly a little bit clearer now. I can see myself, I can hear myself, and I record. So that's another thing that I recommend people do, is that they must record themselves, listen back, because this is an art form. In some ways, speech is an art form. I view it like an art form. And if I'm going to be a professional speaker, and I am a professional speaker, I want to perfect my art. It's like, why did I even get rid of my ooh, why am I a member of Toastmasters today? Because I feel like, just like a singer should never go off tune while they're singing and people are paying to hear them sing, nobody should listen to a public speaker who's getting paid to speak, but they're going off tune all the time by saying, oh, you know, all this time. And it sounds so horrible when it's amplified on a microphone. So
yes,
that's
we
why
call them we call them verbal viruses in my profession.
That's a great term.
Verbal viruses. I'm a trained speech language pathologist, and I've never heard of that method. Actually, Tomiko shared that with me. Okay. But I've never actually heard of it. I do talk about oral motor movement, about the tongue, the lips, and such, but I don't want to talk too much about me. I really do want to get about the brand. I thank you for sharing your story. That was very interesting that you were a DJ on an English speaking channel. That was very interesting. But I really am interested in building my brand. And I know that I could sometimes I might be in a little bit of a sensitive area, because there are some people that push back against learning an American accent. It's, you know, why people should accept me for the way I am. And I get that, and I embrace that. And everybody, I work with people who really want to improve. I'm not forcing people to improve. I've had clients in, I have mostly Asian and Indian clients based out of New York, but I do, I've had people from Nigeria. I've had clients all over the world. And I just want to build my brand. The way I've been building my brand is I don't work on strict pronunciation. We work on intonation, American intonation, and the patterns of the speech. And it was interesting the way you said that about the ears, because there are studies that show that American English speakers, if you have a heavily accented speech, but you speak in an American intonation pattern, then the American English speakers will understand you better. There have been studies done with babies. Babies actually, as soon as they're born, this was done in Germany, they actually understand the German mother before they'll turn to the German speaker, because they've heard that rhythm of the German speech. Okay, so I'm telling everybody, it's okay if you have an accent, but just speak in the American intonation with pitch rises and falls, right? And so that's how I set myself apart. I'm not straight enunciation or pronunciation. I do work on a few sounds with people that might enhance their speech and their clarity and their confidence. But I kind of take a dual approach there, where it's intonation, and then I try to go for natural sounding speech, even if it's still heavily accented. And that's where that's where I am finding my successes. I'm really connecting with people, but I'm having problems just organically growing. And so I just wanted to talk to you about branding.
So let me suggest something, because I noticed something that could grade people the wrong way.
Okay.
Because it is not the American accent or the American intonation that you're probably teaching, because even in the vast country of America, USA, as you probably know, there are zillions of accents.
Right. We call it standard cultural American accent, actually.
Yeah. So my recommendation to you would be building the brand upon the key message that you already have: be understood. Your goal is to be understood, and not necessarily understood by one part of America, but all of America and the rest of the world. So I am going to help you improve your ability to be understood. And I would focus that rather than the term American, because depending on who you talk with, they might say, well, just like you mentioned, you might get that little pushback. I might give you a little pushback myself if you try to teach me the American accent. But instead, if you try to teach me, hey, Dr. Hasib, whatever your message may be, I can just help you be understood better. That particular approach will resonate better.
Great.
That's my opinion.
Yeah,
So
I think
build a brand on that. That's a powerful brand. All right.
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I have a professor in mathematics at Sacred Heart University who is Spanish speaking, and he is just so horrified of his voice. And I just want to give him some confidence. And he's actually looking for someone to read his lectures for him. And he's actually, I think he's beautifully understood.
Yeah.
So
you should be proud of that. That was one of the things that when I read my own book, I wanted to be authentic in my voice. So you could tell him, you want your authentic voice, but let me help you get that voice better clarity. Right. Embrace yourself. So
do you believe in LinkedIn for pushing your message out and your branding?
Absolutely. So LinkedIn, not for 100% pure marketing purposes, but little stories like how you may have helped a particular client in some way, not necessarily reveal the names and all that, but how your approach may have helped somebody succeed. Just the same way that you see somebody who is a resume writer will sometimes share a client story about how their rewriting of the resume got the client a job. So if you can share those stories, that would be cool. Then your brand, Linda Nelson, as the be understood person becomes branded. But it's not about, hey, always hire me to give. You will notice that I almost never say hire me as a conference speaker or whatever in none of my content that is out there. But what is out there is my sharing of whatever I can possibly share without losing my ability to earn a living.
Right.
Okay. Once you build your brand, people will flock to you, opportunities will flock to you. And as you tell your client stories, celebrate the clients, and then your brand will show through. And if you can get clients to talk about that, that would be even better. Because you have that perfect story. You could have the client talk in beautiful English that you helped bring out.
Right, right. When you were speaking to Tomiko about people who would sponsor you, for instance, I had a quick question. I get a lot of work from a company in New York that hires or helps international students, graduate students, transition into the workforce. And she sends me quite a bit of work, and she's actually put me on her cover page of her website as one of her coaches. She has coaches in finance, etc. I'm the speech coach. And so do you believe in like cross marketing that way? So I'm her speech coach. Now, should on my website, would I say I'm proud to be part of, this company's, I am this company's speech coach?
You absolutely can. Again, make it a story rather than a marketing piece. Make it a content story piece. This is the cool thing that I'm doing. I'm so excited about this new partnership that I'm doing because this is what that partner is going to bring to me, and here's how I'm helping that person. So make it a story about you because it's about you. You want to build relationships around your brand. You as Linda Nelson people should be flocking around you, and you should be building your domain.
Okay.
And it will take time because it's all about relationships.
Right.
You see, all the people that you've touched and helped, they will amplify your voice. And it is very important to share content pieces, like pieces that will be useful to somebody. For example, you mentioned that you have some speech like therapy or techniques that would help somebody's thing. Well, could there be a video of you sharing a minute or two of some of that? Just that.
Yes.
And as long as you put that video out there, it's not like you're giving away your whole thing, but people see, oh, wow, she speaks well.
Yes, I do think even watching your reruns from your prior classes that you've done, I'm getting much more interested in producing some videos because my one-on-ones with these folks are just fabulous. I have great connections, I get great results, but I'm not branding well enough. And so I really, I love, again, the way you've got your Bitmojis and
it's
all
going to take time. Yeah, this is an experiment that you have to, it's a journey, and it won't happen immediately.
Right.
But it will happen over time, and we can certainly carry on our conversation. But I'm going to bring in Divine Ntang,
thank you so
our
much.
final guest for this evening. Thank you very much, Linda. That was
was
a wonderful discussion we had around some of your issues. So now, Divine, how are you?
I am fine, Dr. Mansur. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here today.
Great. Introduce yourself in a couple of minutes, and then let's get into your topics and questions.
Okay, my name is Divine Ntang. I am a student at UMGC. I'm graduating this year in December. And actually, I am very passionate in sharing knowledge. Actually, for the past 9 years, I have been a teacher and a tutor. I come from Cameroon, a very, very different kind of background, much diversified in terms of language. And so being here, I have this passion to really teach something else. So that is what got me into cybersecurity. So I am transitioning into cybersecurity. I intend to study cybersecurity not only for work, but also to teach it to particularly minorities. So it is really here. I am very happy. I have enjoyed the show so far.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So you're graduating in December. Congratulations. That is absolutely wonderful. I think I met you when you were just starting the program.
That's right.
Wonderful. Wow, wow. So what are some of your issues and questions that you want to talk about today?
Okay, so I was also going to talk even about accent, the first thing, but fortunately, you and Linda Nelson have spoken a lot on that, because that is one thing that affects particularly some of us who come from different backgrounds. I am from Cameroon, which is it is the most linguistically diversified place in the world. That means small area. Like my country has a population of just about 30 million people, but we have 285 languages with 2 official languages, which are colonial languages, that is French and English. I speak 5 languages, though 3 of them are typically African. So this affects us. Like if somebody from my country, or I'm going for an interview, we have that pre-war doom, you know, when you think that you're not going to be understood. I mean, I like Linda's, yeah, I like Linda's, she said something, okay, be understood, right? Yeah, she talked about be understood. That is very important. When you're going, for instance, for an interview, and you're like, in your mind, you're like, my accent, you know, I don't know if they're going to understand me. That creates that pre-war doom. You feel like you're finished, you're not going to make it. So that actually holds us behind. Again, I cannot really speak very fluently like an American, because since I speak French, I studied in French and English, and I also speak and write some African languages. There are particular things that I think of them in other languages. Like there are certain things that I think of them first in my mother tongue, which is Mungaka. Then I try to translate, and sometimes the translations do not really match. There are other things too that I understand them better in French. And so all of this, it kind of holds me back a little bit, you know, as far as communication is concerned. And cybersecurity has to do a lot with communication. So I am transitioning into cybersecurity, and I want to teach cybersecurity. So that was one thing I was going to ask, but I think the question has already been answered. I mean, a lot has been said on that.
All right. So let's go into whatever else you want to talk about.
Okay. One other thing I wanted to talk about is leadership and the human element.
Okay.
Yeah. When Rhea spoke, she said something about human element, people skills, and things like that. So, and I remember I was in the last RSA conference that held in San Francisco. And so there the conversation was based on the human element. So I think that the human element and leadership, cybersecurity leadership, is basically like both of these terms share shades of meaning. So I just wanted to ask, are they the same? What do you think about, what do you have to say on that?
This is actually a very interesting question. So I was actually there at RSA and I saw that they were talking about human element, but if you noticed that at RSA, I had offered to talk about cybersecurity leadership, but that was not one of the proposals that was accepted. Because what I saw that they were doing over there at RSA is, once again, pushing technology. They're trying to control the human element, okay? Humans are not controllable. You don't want to control humans. You don't want to manage humans. You want to lead humans. And that's why I've always talked about the leadership element. This is why that question that you just asked, that we had a 45,000 member conference about the human element, and yet in that entire conference, we never talked about cybersecurity leadership. Not a single session was about cybersecurity leadership. It was all about controlling the human element through technology by surveillance and mouse clicks and this and that and insider threats. In other words, we're viewing the human element as a threat, not as an asset.
Thank you.
And that is the complete wrong way to look at the human element. And I have talked about that quite a bit. I would have been okay if there were competing elements. If there was somebody talking against me, talking about controlling the humans, and I was talking about empowering the humans, that would have been a good session. But that entire conference devoted to the human element was all about controlling the human elements, getting rid of insider threats by surveillance and monitoring and technology and all of that, and ferreting out the insider threat. And guess what happens when you do that? You stifle innovation, right?
That's true.
Humans are monitored and surveilled. They will never innovate.
That is true.
Because doing nothing, a person who does nothing makes no mistakes.
Thank you, Dr. Mansur. Thank you for your answer. And then one other question too that I have is in relation to college education. I have had this argument with someone who was trying to stress that instead of going to the university to get a degree at the university, it is preferable to just get some cybersecurity training and get your certifications and quickly jump into the field. He also added that university education is far too expensive compared to how much you will spend in boot camps and other trainings to get just your certifications and get on the field. So I understand that there are some very, very long-term benefits and advantages that you have when you go to school. I quoted myself that the reason I'm going to the university, actually my first training in cybersecurity was in a boot camp where I studied the risk management framework. But then I decided to enroll at the university and get the kind of broad, knowledge on cybersecurity. So what do you have to say on that?
Another excellent question. Thank you again for that particular question. But whenever somebody tells you that, my recommendation to you is, before you answer that question, ask them, what is your definition of cybersecurity? What is your understanding of cybersecurity upon which you base this? Why do you say that? Because just the expensive is not the issue, because it is not about the expense, it is about the value. So let us say you spent $25,000 to get a master's degree, but if that allows you to land a job that pays whatever multiples of that, then the value you get out of that investment is huge. On the other hand, you could spend $5,000 and get some boot camp and training, and then what would it do to you? Would you really get a job that is, say, $100,000 a year or whatever? And what exactly would it teach you? What boot camp is it? Is it a Security Plus boot camp, or CISSP bootcamp? And if so, it's only teaching you that particular slice of thing. It's not teaching you cybersecurity. And that is why I always ask would have asked the person, what is your understanding of cybersecurity? You might find that that person doesn't know cybersecurity and has no business advising you. So this is another problem that I have with a lot of people that give people advice, and they're literally messing up people's minds and giving them the wrong advice. People should refrain from giving advice that they're not qualified to give advice. If that person has no degree in cybersecurity, chances are that person is not qualified to give you advice on cybersecurity. Yet, there are plenty of people. I see HR professionals giving people advice about how to get into cybersecurity. I'm like, you're an HR professional. How did you know about how to get into cybersecurity? You're not in the field. If you're just HR and you're a recruiter, you're not in the field.
That's right.
So you may not know about cybersecurity or how to get into it.
That is right.
I've seen a lot of people talk about that. Now, to answer your particular question, what is the basic difference between, let's say, a master's program or an academic program versus a boot camp? Well, the academic program's whole goal is to change your brain forever, is to develop the human brain takes a long time to develop. You notice 5 years of age, 10 years of age, we go through all this schooling, elementary school, middle school, high school, college, all this. Why? It's not just whatever is being taught to you, it is your brain and all parts of your brain being developed to the fullest extent possible. Language, music, art, speech, all are using different parts of the brain. And that is why in any comprehensive bachelor's program, you will get a domain knowledge, but you will also get a broad knowledge in history, language, music, all these things to develop various parts of your brain, and also to help you find your passion within the field, because cybersecurity is such a broad field that let us say that you did a certification. Well, you're not understanding cybersecurity. You may be understanding, let's say if it's a vendor certification, then you are understanding that little slice of vendor technology. You're not understanding cybersecurity. That is not cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is what you went through, where you can talk about the whole field. You know the breadth and depth of the field. You also might know which aspect of the field appeals to you. And notice that you were also one of the few people that went to RSA and immediately recognized, because of the complex brain that you have already developed through the master's program, you went to RSA and you saw this big thing about human element. You actually expected to find cybersecurity leadership over there, but you didn't find it. And immediately it caused a dissonance in your brain. So as you can see, you are a great example of what that education did to you and did to your brain. It has developed you forever at a level that you will never come down from.
Thank you so much, Dr.
And that is why your degree will never expire either.
Okay.
You see, your brain is at far complex level. You are able to think of far more complex things than somebody who did a boot camp.
And that is the problem, because some of these people who use this kind of path to get to where they are today are the ones to hire us who are graduating.
Yeah, sometimes that is the case. Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah, so they have a particular way of looking at things.
Yes.
You see, the hiring process is based on that, you know,
yes,
and that is the problem that most of us.
And they may actually be threatened by you. That is why they don't want you to get the education.
Thank you. Yeah.
All
okay.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. I think I didn't have many questions today, but
no, that is good. That is good. I think we are sort of almost out of time. So what I want to do now is thank you very much for asking those questions and coming on here.